adults usually, when kids are being resistant, adults usually try to be more persuasive. They try to use stronger arguments. So repetition, nagging, getting angry. Adults get very logical. Sometimes I'll have parents come to my office and they're like, well, I told him about university and he didn't seem to believe me. They'll give me these really rational reasons. They'll bribe. They'll use because I said so. Does it work? Sometimes. But what really happens is, and we'll talk about this more, is adults start, all of you in here are playing a long-term game. None of you are raising children. All of you are raising adults. Does that make sense? You're trying to raise independent adults. Your children are just trying to play their game. They're playing a short-term game. They're playing a right-now game. You're playing a long-term game. And sometimes that's the conflict. That alone is the conflict. They don't understand the idea of a long-term game because they can't. They don't even know what a week means. But what happens is that parents become, when the kids are saying no, parents try to leverage up the persuasion. And then what happens is kids become more resistant. Here's the three sorts of responses that I tend to hear the most often. The cold coach. Parents will say things like, I just gave up. I'm just going to back off for a while. The sort of, in the research literature, there's actually a term for kids that have long-term anxiety disorders, that one of the things that prevents them from moving forward and getting over the disorder. I don't love the term, but I want to share it with you. It's called the cold father. And it's like when the parents are like, I'm not going to pay attention to his emotions. That actually keeps anxiety disorders going. The other one is the police officer parent, where the parents become demanding and start saying, do you have homework? Did you do your homework? Where's your math? They do this investigation constantly. Kids just feel like they're being interrogated, so they just try to avoid it altogether. And then I put on the bottom the accommodator, and that's the parents that are super really protective, they're going to do everything possible. We're not going to say the word math because he can't handle himself when we say the word math. We're not going to walk down the cereal aisle because he can't handle himself when he sees cereal. We're only going to talk about, or we're only going to go out on Saturday because on Sundays he tends to have a meltdown. So this is the accommodator. Also not a great idea either, but we'll talk about the third response. But these are just types of persuasion the parents try to use. They try to become cold, or kids will say, they gave me the silent treatment, which is just so heartbreaking, because the kid doesn't really understand. I'm saying the kid, but I'm actually just referring to generally children. Yeah, there are exceptions. So it's a short-term strategy for a long-term game. Here's why it doesn't work. When you try to be more persuasive, and I want to be sure that I can be clear on why I'm going to talk about drug addiction research when we're in a room of parents for small children. But one of the really interesting findings is that when people want to do something, they're probably going to do that thing. That comes from the drug addiction research. But here's what happens. If I start telling someone all the reasons that they shouldn't be having a glass of wine at lunch or whatever, what do they start doing? Well, in their mind, they start coming up with all the reasons that they could be having a glass of wine, even if they didn't think of those reasons before. Now they're thinking about them, and they're buying into those reasons. So not only are they coming up with reasons, but they're buying into them too. So when you are persuading your children, the same sort of thing happens. Hey, too late. You can't be staying up all night on the computer. I'm fine. My friends do it. They didn't think about that before. I'll be fine. I'm never even tired in class. I can handle it. They start coming up with you're being aggressive. All these reasons start coming out of their mouths, and then now that they're going to defend those reasons. So more persuasion on your end creates more reasoning on their end, and then digging in heels, and now you have people that are choosing between a relationship with their child and I'm going to break your laptop. It's not really a solution. Here's the other thing. If it actually works, here's the other problem that you're up against. If you win every argument with your child, you now have a child that feels like a loser. You don't want to live with a kid who feels like a loser. They stay in their room and they don't talk to you. And they don't talk to their friends. And they don't talk to their teachers. And they don't do anything that takes any sort of risk-taking because they don't want to lose all the time. So even if you win, you lose. That's sort of what you're up against when you start trying to be more persuasive with a kid who's not wanting to be persuaded.